There are two versions of Alex Saab. In one, he is a diplomat, a successful businessman, and the Minister of Industry of Venezuela, a man who, according to the Maduro regime, risked his freedom to bring food to millions of starving Venezuelans. In the other version, the one that appears in the files of the U.S. Department of Justice, the Colombian Prosecutor's Office, and the Italian courts, Alex Saab is something else. He is the mastermind behind a money laundering network that moved millions of dollars out of Venezuela. He is the man who sold boxes of food with a 112% markup to families who had nothing to eat. He is the Colombian who bought a €5 million apartment on the most exclusive street in Rome while Venezuelan children died of malnutrition. Two versions. One man. Which one is the true one? Just a few days ago, on January 17th, 2026, Delcy Rodriguez, the new interim president of Venezuela after the capture of Nicolas Maduro, dismissed him from the cabinet. 3 months earlier, on October 30th, 2025, an Italian court had sentenced him to 1 year and 2 months in prison for money laundering. The man Maduro called a hero is now discarded like a dirty rag. But that's just the latest page in a story that began more than 3 decades ago in the Barranquilla of the 1990s with a 24-year-old young man selling keychains on the streets. Before continuing, I want to ask you something. If this content seems important to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. It's not just for the numbers, it's because the algorithms don't favor these topics. Stories of corruption, money laundering, characters who prefer to remain in the shadows, YouTube doesn't recommend them easily. If you don't subscribe, it's likely you won't see our videos again. And believe me, what comes next in this story is much worse than you can imagine. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and get ready. Because to understand how a keychain seller from Barranquilla became the most protected frontman in Venezuela, we have to start from the beginning. Alex Saab Moran was born on December 21, 1971. Today, he is 54 years old. His father, Luis Saab, was a Lebanese immigrant who arrived in Colombia selling fabrics door to door. Over time, he opened several textile stores in Barranquilla. Alex was the third of 4 siblings. He studied business administration at the Universidad del Norte. He didn't graduate, but that didn't stop him. From a very young age, he showed what his defenders call entrepreneurial vision, and his critics call ambition without scruples. He started selling promotional keychains, then caps, then work uniforms, then printed t-shirts, small businesses, modest profits, a normal life in the Colombian Caribbean. No one imagined back then that this slim young man with an easy smile and an Arab surname would end up dining with presidents, moving hundreds of millions of dollars, and being pursued by the world's most powerful intelligence agencies. No one imagined he would become the man who sold hunger. But to get there, he first had to cross a border, not the one to Venezuela, but the border between the legal and the illegal. And that happened earlier than many think. Miami, 1995. Alex Saab is 23 years old. He's skinny, ambitious, and convinced that his future is in the United States. He has just married Cynthia Certain, the daughter of a renowned architect from Barranquilla. And he has a plan. His family's towel factory is doing well, but Saab wants more. He wants to be a tycoon, to conquer the gringo market. So he hires lawyers, processes a work visa, and crosses the border with suitcases full of dreams. In July of that year, he creates the firm Saab Company. He rents an office in Brickell, the financial heart of Miami, and lives in a modest townhouse in Kendall. It's not luxurious, but it's his, and it's American. The plan seems to work until everything collapses. Less than 2 years later, the U.S. Embassy revokes his visa. The reason? Suspicions of drug trafficking and money laundering. The authorities had found cocaine hidden in boxes of towels coming from Barranquilla. Saab blamed Israeli businessmen competing with his family. He said they planted the drugs on him, but the explanations didn't help. The visa was canceled, and the American dream died before he turned 25. He could never return to the United States, but what seemed like the end was actually the beginning because Alex Saab wasn't one to give up, and if the doors of Miami closed, he would look for other doors, darker, more dangerous, but infinitely more profitable. In October 1998, 3 years after the failure in Florida, Saab creates a new company in Barranquilla, Shatex, a corporation. Officially, it deals in the commercialization of textiles, uniforms, fabrics, and exports. In practice, according to investigations that would come years later, Shatex was something else. The Colombian prosecutor's office would call it a paper company, a front for fictitious operations. Between 2004 and 2011, according to investigators, the company laundered more than 25,000 million Colombian pesos. The money came from Venezuela and went out to ghost accounts abroad. But that's not the most striking part. The most striking is the growth. In 2006, Shatex was in losses. Its revenues had fallen by 33%. It seemed like a dying company, and then, out of nowhere in 2007, a miracle. Shatex grew by 923%. Not 9%, not 90%, but 923%. How is that possible? How does a textile company on the brink of bankruptcy suddenly explode in profits? The answer has a name and surname. Álvaro Enrique Pulido Vargas, or rather Germán Enrique Rubio Salas, because that was his real name, the one he used before changing his identity, before stealing the documents of a Colombian who died in Miami in 2005, before reinventing himself as a respectable businessman. The Colombian police knew him well. In 2000, they captured him as the leader of the Bogotá cartel. The accusations, coordinating the shipment of 2 tons of cocaine and 17 kilograms of heroin to Europe. In Italy, he was sentenced in absentia to 15 years in prison. That was Alex Saab's new partner, a fugitive drug trafficker, a man with 5 false identities, a criminal who had already evaded justice on 3 continents. How did they meet? Investigations point to a name that will appear several times in this story, Piedad Córdoba. The former Colombian senator close to Chavismo allegedly introduced Saab to the circles of power in Venezuela. She helped him collect pending invoices from Hugo Chávez's government and, according to investigators, opened the door that would change everything. The door to Caracas, the door to Miraflores Palace, the door to hundreds of millions of dollars. Alex was no longer the young man selling keychains. He was no longer the failed dreamer from Miami. Now he had a partner with drug trafficking connections, a front company for money laundering, and direct contact with the richest oil government in Latin America. Only one thing was missing, the contract that would make him a multimillionaire. And that contract was about to arrive. November 28, 2011, Miraflores Palace, Caracas. The hall is full of ministers, photographers, and TV cameras. At the main table, 2 presidents, Hugo Chávez and Juan Manuel Santos. Behind them, the then Venezuelan Foreign Minister Nicolás Maduro watches every move. It's a historic day. Colombia and Venezuela signed trade agreements to eliminate tariff barriers. But there's a specific agreement that goes almost unnoticed, an agreement to build prefabricated housing for Venezuela's poor. On behalf of the Venezuelan government, the Corporation of Intermediate Industries of Venezuela signs. On behalf of the private company, a 39-year-old Colombian young man signs, his name, Alex Saab. The Venezuelan journalists present, notice something strange. The company Saab represents, Fondo Global de Construcción, has no experience in the construction sector. And most strikingly, it had been registered just 4 days earlier, on November 24, 2011. 4 days, a newborn company with no history, no previous projects, not a single house built, and suddenly, in front of 2 presidents, it signs a contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars. How is that possible? To understand it, you have to grasp how Venezuela worked at that time. Hugo Chávez had created the Great Housing Mission Venezuela. The goal was to build millions of homes for the poorest sectors. It was his great social promise, his legacy. And to fulfill it, he needed suppliers, many suppliers, with juicy contracts and few controls. That's where Alex Saab came in. The agreement called for the construction of 8,400 prefabricated homes. The total amount, between $654 and $685 million according to different sources. An astronomical figure for a company that didn't exist a week before. But the real business wasn't in building houses. The real business was in the exchange control system. Venezuela had an agency called Khedive that controlled access to dollars. If you wanted to import materials, you had to request authorization, and if you had the right contacts, you could get dollars at a preferential rate far below the black market. Saab and Pulido understood the game perfectly. The scheme worked like this. They submitted invoices for construction materials supposedly imported from Ecuador. The Venezuelan government paid them in preferential dollars, but the materials never arrived or arrived in ridiculous quantities. How much did they receive? How much did they deliver? The figures are chilling. According to the investigative portal Armando.info, between 2012 and 2013, Fondo Global de Construcción received nearly $159 million from the Venezuelan government to import housing materials, but only delivered products worth $3 million. Read that again. They received $159 million. They delivered $3 million. That means millions of dollars simply disappeared. They vanished in the labyrinth of shell companies that Saab and Pulido had built in Colombia, Ecuador, Spain, Malta. and Hong Kong. And the promised houses were never built. An Ecuadorian assemblyman who investigated the case summed it up with a devastating phrase: Colombia never exported a single door to Venezuela. Not a door, not a window, not a brick. Everything was fictitious. A paper castle designed to drain the coffers of the Venezuelan state, while millions of families continued waiting for a roof. Hugo Chavez died in March 2013, without knowing that his great housing mission had been looted from within. Or maybe he did know. Maybe it was part of the plan. What is certain is that when Nicolas Maduro assumed the presidency, Alex Saab did not lose his privileged position. Quite the opposite. Maduro promoted him, gave him more contracts, more access, more power, because the housing business had been just the appetizer. The main course was yet to come, a bigger, even more obscene business that would reach the table of every Venezuelan family. It was called clap, and with it, Alex Saab would not only steal money, he would steal the hunger of an entire country. 2016, Venezuela is sinking, inflation is skyrocketing, supermarkets are empty, lines to buy food last hours, days, people sleep on the streets waiting for a truck with flour to arrive. Nicolas Maduro has a problem. His people are dying of hunger, and a hungry people is a dangerous people. So, he creates the clap, local supply and production committees. It sounds technical, revolutionary, like a solution. The idea is simple. The government buys food abroad and sells it at subsidized prices directly to the poorest families. No intermediaries, no speculators, food from the people, for the people. In theory, it was a social program. In practice, it was the most brazen theft in Venezuela's history. And Alex Saab was at the center of it all. Through Group Grand Limited, a company registered in Hong Kong, Saab became the main food supplier for the clap. He bought products in Mexico, shipped them to Venezuela, and charged the government in preferential dollars. The business was perfect. Too perfect. In August 2017, the Mexican newspaper Excelsior uncovered the pot. Their investigation revealed what Venezuelans suspected but couldn't prove. Maduro was selling the food boxes 112% more expensive than they cost. Read that carefully? 112%. The mechanism was brutal in its simplicity. Saab bought low-quality products in Mexico for approximately $16. Then he resold them to the Venezuelan government for $34, and the government distributed them to the people as if they were a revolutionary gift. The markup didn't go to the state's coffers, it went to the pockets of Saab, Pulido, corrupt officials, and according to the U.S. Department of the Treasury, also to the pockets of Maduro's three stepsons, Walter Jacob, Yoser, and Joser Gavidia Flores. The accusation is devastating. The stepsons received bribes from Saab in exchange for giving him access to overvalued contracts with the government. Their closeness to Maduro and Celia Flores allowed them to manipulate who received the million-dollar contracts. But the theft didn't end with the markup. There was also the quality. The powdered milk that arrived in the clap boxes was a fraud. Laboratory analyses conducted by the Central University of Venezuela showed that Mexican brands like Maclesh, Suprema, or Rancho Nuevo lied about the nutritional information. The product was low in proteins and calcium, but high in carbohydrates and sodium. It didn't meet Venezuela's covenant standards. It was fake milk for very real hunger. A single Mexican company, El Sardinero, issued invoices for $238 million to Group Grand Limited, $238 million for poor quality food that didn't even nourish. And meanwhile, what was happening in Venezuela? Children were dying of malnutrition in hospitals, mothers crossed the border to Colombia to beg for food, the elderly rummaged through garbage for something to eat. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said it bluntly: Alex Saab colluded with Maduro's inner circle to run a large-scale corruption network they cruelly used to exploit Venezuela's starving population. Cruelly, that's the key word. It wasn't just corruption, not just theft. It was cruelty. It was looking at millions of desperate people for a plate of food and saying, "I'm going to become a millionaire off your hunger." On July 25, 2019, the United States sanctioned Saab, Pulido, Maduro's three stepsons, and 13 companies linked to the scheme. They froze their assets and banned them from transactions in the U.S. financial system. But by then, the damage was done, and Alex Saab was already living like a king. While Venezuela sank into misery, Alex Saab built an empire of luxury. Barranquilla, 2015. Saab returns to his hometown, but not the same. He left as a keychain seller with broken dreams. He returns as a man capable of buying half the city, and the first thing he does is build a mansion. Not a big house, a mansion, a monument to his own ego. 3,740 square meters, 3 levels, 2 pools, a professional tennis court with clay surface, jacuzzi, private movie theater, grand piano, rooms with walk-in closets larger than entire apartments. Estimated value, 28,000 million Colombian pesos, almost $7 million. And there's a story behind that construction that says a lot about Alex Saab. When he returned to Barranquilla with his new wife, the Italian model Camilla Fabri, he tried to join the country club, the most exclusive club in the city. The place where the elite gathers, they denied him membership. Barranquilla's high society didn't want this nouveau riche with money of dubious origin in their ranks. No matter how many millions he had, to them he was still the son of the Lebanese merchant who sold keychains. Saab's response was brutal. He bought lots right next to the most exclusive school in the area, combined them, and built his own fortress, with his own tennis court, his own pools, with everything the country club had and more. From the outside, neighbors described it as a bunker. High walls that let nothing be seen. Only luxury vehicles were seen coming and going. But Barranquilla was just one of his residences. In Rome, Italy, Saab had another life. An apartment at Via Condotti 9. For those who don't know Rome, Via Condotti is the most exclusive street in the city, where the boutiques of Gucci, Prada, Bulgari are located, where a square meter costs more than an entire house in any popular neighborhood in Venezuela. The apartment was valued at nearly 5 million euros. And here's the most obscene part. Camilla Fabri, Saab's Italian wife, had a declared salary of 1,840 euros per year, less than 2,000 euros annually, a pittance by European standards, but with that salary, she paid a rent of 5,800 euros monthly. She drove a Range Rover Evoque worth over 50,000 euros and owned a 5 million euro apartment in the heart of Rome. The numbers didn't add up, and the Italian justice system noticed. In October 2019, Italian authorities seized assets from Camilla Fabri worth millions of euros, apartment artworks, jewelry, bank accounts, all under suspicion of money laundering. The investigation revealed that Saab had registered her as the owner of companies in England, that she received transfers from Panama and Switzerland, that she was essentially another piece in the financial puzzle Saab had built to hide his fortune. On October 30, 2025, Italian justice finally acted. Alex Saab was sentenced to 1 year and 2 months in prison. Camilla Fabri to 1 year and 7 months. The charge, money laundering. In addition, the confiscation of more than 7 million euros in assets was ordered. Think about it for a moment. While Venezuelan mothers opened clap boxes with adulterated milk that didn't nourish their children, Alex decorated apartments in Rome with artworks. While the elderly died of hunger in hospitals without medicine, Saab swam in 5-star hotel pools in his Barranquilla mansion. While millions fled the country walking through trails to Colombia, Saab traveled in private jets between Caracas, Rome, and Moscow. The contrast is so brutal, it seems like fiction, but it's not. It's the real story of how one man turned the hunger of a people into his personal fortune, and everything seemed perfect for Alex. Until one day in June 2020, his plane made a technical stop in the wrong place, June 12, 2020. Amilcar Cabral International Airport, Sal Island, Cape Verde. A private jet with Venezuelan registration lands to refuel. It's a routine technical stop. The plane is coming from Caracas and heading to Tehran. Inside travels Alex Saab. According to Maduro's government, Saab is on a humanitarian mission. He's going to seek medicines and food for Venezuela amid the COVID-19 pandemic. He's a diplomat, a revolutionary hero. According to the United States, Saab is a criminal, a money launderer, the dictator's front man, and he's been in their sights for years. When the plane stops on the runway, Cape Verdean authorities already have the order, a red Interpol alert requested by Washington. Accusation, conspiracy to launder up to $350 million. Alex Saab gets off the plane and doesn't get back on. The capture caught Caracas by surprise. Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza called it arbitrary and irregular, a violation of international law, an imperialist kidnapping. But it was too late. Saab was trapped in a small African archipelago thousands of kilometers from Venezuela, thousands of kilometers from his mansions, thousands of kilometers from his protector. And then began a legal battle that would last years. Maduro's government deployed all its resources. They hired the famous Spanish jurist Baltasar Garzón to coordinate the defense. They filled Caracas with billboards demanding Saab's release. They organized demonstrations. They launched a YouTube series. They named him a diplomat and ambassador. They even sent a plane to neighboring Guinea-Bissau ready to evacuate Saab if they managed to free him. The United States responded with force. A warship, the USS San Jacinto, was secretly deployed in Cape Verdean waters to deter any rescue attempt. Iranian planes that tried to land in the archipelago were rejected. The message was clear. Alex Saab was not going to escape. For 16 months, Saab remained detained in Cape Verde while lawyers fought every possible appeal. Habeas corpus, appeals, arguments of diplomatic immunity, nothing worked. On October 16, 2021, Alex Saab was extradited to the United States. He landed in Miami, the same city where he had dreamed of being a tycoon 25 years earlier. The same city that had closed its doors to him when they found cocaine in his towels. Now he returned in handcuffs, dressed in the orange uniform of federal prisoners. The irony of fate. In response, Maduro suspended negotiations with the Venezuelan opposition. Saab had become too valuable a pawn to lose. Why so much interest in a simple businessman? Because Alex Saab knew too much. He knew the money routes, the names of corrupt officials, the accounts in Switzerland, Panama, Hong Kong, the gold shipments to Turkey, the deals with Iran. Every dark secret of Chavismo passed through his hands. If Saab talked, the regime would fall. But Saab didn't talk, or at least not enough. Months passed. Saab remained in a Miami prison while his trial was postponed time and again. His lawyers tried everything, arguing diplomatic immunity, questioning jurisdiction, delaying the process, and then in December 2023, came the twist no one expected. Joe Biden needed to bring home 10 Americans imprisoned in Venezuela. Among them, 2 former Green Berets sentenced to 20 years for a failed attempt to overthrow Maduro. The bargaining chip, Alex Saab, on December 20th, 2023, after more than 1,280 days in prison, Alex Saab was released with a presidential pardon from Biden. He landed in Caracas and was received like a hero. Maduro embraced him at Miraflores Palace. In March 2024, U.S. Justice dismissed all charges against him. Alex Saab had won, or so it seemed. October 2024, Alex Saab had reached the top. On October 18th, Nicolás Maduro appointed him Minister of the People's Power for Industry and National Production. The keychain seller from Barranquilla was now part of a government's cabinet. The man who had been captured, imprisoned, and extradited now had his own office in Caracas. I am sure that with his great managerial capacity and commitment to our people, he will drive the development of Venezuela's entire industrial system, Maduro said when announcing the appointment. Managerial capacity, commitment to the people. The same words used to describe the man accused of stealing $350 million through adulterated food boxes. Alex Saab had won, had defeated the United States, had returned triumphant, and now had more power than ever. But fate had other plans. October 30th, 2025, while Saab enjoyed his new position in Caracas, a court in Rome issued its sentence. The investigation into the apartment at Via Condotti 9 had come to an end. Alex Saab, guilty of money laundering, sentence 1 year and 2 months in prison. His wife, Camilla Fabri, 1 year and 7 months. In addition, Italian justice ordered the confiscation of more than 7 million euros in assets. Saab could escape U.S. justice, but he couldn't escape all of them. And then came January 2026. January 3rd, early morning, U.S. helicopters fly over Caracas, explosions, gunshots, chaos. Nicolás Maduro is captured by U.S. Special Forces, taken out of the country, transferred to New York, entered into the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. The man who had protected Alex Saab for a decade was now in a cell. 2 days later, Delcy Rodriguez is sworn in as interim president of Venezuela. And then the final blow, January 17th, 2026. Just 2 weeks after Maduro's capture, Delcy Rodriguez dismisses Alex from his position as minister. She announces the merger of his ministry with another. She thanks him for his service to the homeland, promises him new responsibilities. Empty words. Roberto Deniz, the Armando.info journalist who had investigated Saab for years and had to go into exile for it, summed it up perfectly. It's revealing that they remove him so quickly. That suggests that Delcy is coming to work with her people and knows she has to change structures that don't work for her. Because saying Alex Saab is saying Nicolás Maduro. Alex Saab had been discarded. The same system that elevated him now discarded him. Without trial, without explanation, without ceremony, like a dirty rag that no longer serves. And now, what's next for Alex Saab? He has a sentence in Italy, open cases in Colombia, sanctions in the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. His protector is imprisoned in Brooklyn. His wife is vice minister of a government that no longer needs him. The keychain seller who dreamed of conquering Miami, the businessman who signed million-dollar contracts before presidents, the front man who lived between mansions and luxury apartments, the minister who lasted just 3 months in office. Today, Alex Saab is a man without a country, without allies, without a future. And meanwhile, in some neighborhood in Caracas, a family opens their monthly clap box. Inside, there's rice, pasta, oil, and that powdered milk that never nourished anyone. The box keeps coming, but the man who became a multimillionaire selling it no longer calls the shots. Karma, they say, has a memory, and sooner or later, it always collects.